I once knew two men who started at the same company on the same day, same age, same education, same opportunities, same paycheck. 5 years later, one of them was running a department, financially secure, healthy, and genuinely happy. Still in the same position, struggling with debt 20 pounds heavier, and wondering what happened to his dreams. The difference wasn't talent, it wasn't luck. It wasn't who they knew or where they came from. The difference was something far more subtle, far more dangerous. The second man had been killed slowly, silently, by enemies he never saw coming. And here's what troubles me most about this story. That second man could have been me. In fact, for several years of my life, it was me. Success and happiness don't usually die in a dramatic moment. They don't get destroyed in one catastrophic decision or a single terrible day. No, they die quietly. They die in the small moments we barely notice. They die in the comfortable choices we make when nobody's watching. They die in the gentle drift of days that turn into weeks, weeks that turn into years, and suddenly we wake up wondering how we got so far from where we wanted to be. I call them the silent killers. They're silent because they don't announce themselves. They don't send you a warning letter. They don't show up at your door with a notice that says, "I'm about to destroy your future." They work in whispers, not shouts. They operate in shadows, not spotlight. And that's precisely what makes them so deadly. Think about it this way. If someone came at you with a knife, you'd see them coming. You'd defend yourself. You'd run, fight, or call for help. The threat would be obvious, and your response would be immediate. But what if the threat came disguised as comfort? What if it came dressed up as "just this once," or "I'll start tomorrow," or "it doesn't really matter"? What if the enemy looked like a friend? That's the nature of these silent killers. They're sophisticated. They're patient. They don't demand everything from you at once. They just ask for a little bit today, and a little bit tomorrow, and a little bit the day after that. And before you know it, they've taken everything. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I was 25 years old, I was broke. And I don't mean temporarily short on cash. I mean genuinely, seriously broke. Pennies in my pocket, more bills than money, more month than paycheck. And the worst part, I couldn't figure out how I'd gotten there. I had a job. I worked. I wasn't lazy. So what happened? It took me years to understand that I hadn't failed in one big moment. I had failed in 1,000 small moments. I had been killed by enemies I couldn't name because I didn't know they existed. Every day I made small choices that seemed harmless at the time. Every day I told myself little stories that sounded reasonable. Every day I drifted just a little bit further from the person I wanted to become. And those days added up to a life I didn't want. The breakthrough came when my mentor sat me down and said something I'll never forget. He said, "Jim, the problem isn't what you don't know. The problem is what you don't see." And he was right. I couldn't fight an enemy I couldn't see. I couldn't defend against an attack I didn't recognize. I was losing a war I didn't even know I was in. That conversation changed everything for me. Not immediately change, never happens immediately, but steadily. Because once I could see these silent killers, once I could name them and understand how they operated, I could finally do something about them. I could build defenses. I could make different choices. I could start winning instead of losing. And here's what I want you to understand. These silent killers don't discriminate. They come for everyone. Rich or poor, educated or not, young or old, doesn't matter. They're equal opportunity destroyers. I've seen them take down people with tremendous talent and opportunity. I've watched them rob people of their health, their relationships, their dreams, and their dignity. But I've also seen something else. I've seen people recognize these enemies and defeat them. I've seen ordinary people do extraordinary things simply because they learn to see what most people miss. I've seen lives transform, not through lottery wins or lucky breaks, but through the simple act of becoming aware and making different choices. The question isn't whether these silent killers will come after you. They already have. They're already working. The question is whether you'll have the courage to look honestly at your life and admit where these enemies have already gained ground. This isn't going to be comfortable. The truth rarely is. But I'd rather disturb you into greatness than comfort you into mediocrity. I'd rather wake you up now than watch you sleepwalk through years of your life only to wake up with regret. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through each of these 7 silent killers. I'm going to show you how they operate, how they disguise themselves, and how they slowly rob you of everything you want in life. More importantly, I'm going to show you how to defeat them. Because they can be defeated. I'm living proof of that. But first, you need to make a decision. You need to decide whether you're willing to look honestly at your life, whether you're willing to stop making excuses and start making changes, whether you're willing to see the invisible enemies that have been holding you back. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Once you become aware, you become responsible. The first silent killer almost destroyed my life before I even knew what hit me. It's so common, so ordinary, so acceptable in our society that most people never recognize it as a threat. In fact, most people practice it every single day without the slightest concern. But, make no mistake, it's as deadly as any poison, as destructive as any weapon, and as final as any terminal disease if left unchecked. Word count. 1,088 words, continuing to reach 1,250. This enemy doesn't ask for much, just a day here, small choice there. It doesn't demand that you destroy your life all at once. It simply asks that you do nothing, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Neglect. That's the first silent killer. Simple neglect. It sounds harmless, doesn't it? When you hear the word neglect, you probably don't think of it as a mortal threat to your future. But I'm telling you right now, neglect has destroyed more lives than any dramatic failure ever could. Neglect is the slow leak that sinks the ship. It's the tiny crack in the foundation that eventually brings down the entire house. Here's how neglect works. It's easy to neglect doing something today because the consequences don't show up today. It's easy not to read that book tonight because you won't suddenly become ignorant tomorrow. It's easy to skip your workout because missing one day won't make you overweight by breakfast. It's easy to avoid that difficult conversation with your spouse because your marriage won't fall apart this afternoon. It's easy to ignore your finances because you won't be bankrupt by next week. That's the insidious nature of neglect. The results of neglect don't show up immediately. They accumulate slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And then one day, suddenly it seems everything falls apart. But it wasn't sudden at all. It was a long, slow process of small neglects adding up to catastrophic failure. I learned this lesson in the most personal way possible. When I was in my 20s, I neglected my education. Not completely. I wasn't illiterate or ignorant, but I neglected the habit of daily reading, daily learning, daily growing. I'd come home from work tired, and I'd think I'll read tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and I'd say the same thing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, and while I was neglecting my mind, other people were feeding theirs. They were growing while I was standing still. They were preparing for opportunities while I was watching television. The painful truth is this. When the opportunity came, I wasn't ready. It went to someone else, someone who hadn't neglected their preparation. Think of it like a garden. You plant a garden in the spring, and everything looks beautiful. The soil is fresh, the seeds are in the ground, and you're full of enthusiasm. But then summer comes, and it's hot, and you're busy, and you think, I'll water tomorrow. I'll pull weeds tomorrow. One day won't matter. And you're right, one day doesn't matter. But it's never just one day, is it? It's one day, then another, then another. And while you're neglecting your garden, the weeds aren't neglecting theirs. They're growing, they're spreading. They're choking out everything good you planted. By the time fall comes, your garden is unrecognizable. and you stand there wondering what happened. But nothing happened. That's the point. Nothing happened because you did nothing. The weeds didn't attack you. They just did what weeds do and nobody stops them. Your life works the same way. Neglect the small daily disciplines and the weeds take over. Neglect your health with small poor choices repeated daily, and disease takes root. Neglect your relationships with small acts of indifference repeated over time, and love dies. Neglect your personal development, and ignorance flourishes. The formula is predictable and merciless. But here's the thing that should really get your attention. Just as neglect compounds negatively, attention compounds positively. Small efforts repeated daily create remarkable results. Read 10 pages a day, and by year's end, you've consumed a library. Save a small amount consistently, and over time, you build wealth. Invest 15 minutes daily in your most important relationship, and over years, you build an unshakable bond. The choice between disaster and success often comes down to simple daily neglect versus simple daily discipline. And the tragedy is that both are easy. It's easy to neglect, and it's easy to attend. It's easy not to do, and it's easy to do. The difference in effort is negligible. The difference in results is enormous. Now, the second silent killer works hand in hand with neglect, and this one nearly kept me broke forever. Rationalization. The art of lying to yourself with style. Rationalization is how we justify our neglect. It's how we make peace with our poor choices. It's the mental gymnastics we perform to avoid admitting we're going in the wrong direction. And we all do it. Every single one of us has a PhD in rationalization. When I was 25 and broke, I was a master rationalizer. I'd tell myself I'm young. I've got plenty of time to get serious about money later. That sounded reasonable, didn't it? But it was a lie. I was trading my 20s, prime years, for building a foundation for temporary comfort and entertainment. I'd say I work hard, I deserve to spend my money on things I enjoy. Also sounds reasonable. But it was just an excuse for financial irresponsibility disguised as self-care. The dangerous thing about rationalization is that it sounds so logical. That's why it works. If our excuses sounded like excuses, we wouldn't believe them. So we dress them up in reasonable sounding language. We make them sound like wisdom when they're actually weakness. I'll start my diet on Monday. Sounds reasonable. It's actually rationalization. I'm too old to change careers now. Sounds like realism. It's actually rationalization. I don't have time to read. Sounds like a fact. It's actually rationalization. You have time for what you make time for. The worst part about rationalization is that it prevents learning. When you rationalize your failures and the mistakes, you never have to face the truth about why they happened. You never have to change because you've convinced yourself that external circumstances, not internal choices, are responsible for your results. You're a victim, not an actor. And victims never have to take responsibility. I remember the moment my mentor confronted my rationalizations. I was explaining why I couldn't afford to invest in my education, too many bills, not enough income, bad timing, economic conditions. I had a whole list of perfectly reasonable sounding excuses. He listened patiently, then he said something that hit me like a hammer. Jim, you can make excuses or you can make money. You can't make both. That stopped me cold. Because he was right. Every minute I spent justifying my situation was a minute I wasn't spending changing my situation. Every mental calorie I burned on rationalization was energy I could have used for problem solving. I was working harder to defend my mistakes than I would have had to work to correct them. Rationalization is comfortable. That's why we do it. It protects our ego. It allows us to fail without admitting failure. It lets us stay the same while pretending we want change. But comfort isn't what we need. Growth is what we need. And growth requires honesty, especially self-honesty. The third silent killer is perhaps the most subtle of all because it doesn't feel like anything is wrong. It's called drift. And drift is what happens when you don't have a clear destination. Think about a boat without a rudder, without a sail, without a captain at the helm. It doesn't sink immediately. It doesn't crash into rocks right away. It just drifts. The current takes it, the wind pushes it, and slowly, gradually, it ends up somewhere it never intended to go. By the time the people on that boat realize they're lost, they're so far from where they wanted to be that getting back seems impossible. Most people are drifting through life. They get up, go to work, come home, watch television, go to bed, and repeat. They're not intentionally failing. They're just not intentionally succeeding. They have vague wishes instead of concrete goals. They have hopes instead of plans. They follow the path of least resistance, which means they follow whatever path the crowd is taking. The crowd is usually going nowhere worth going. I drifted for years. I had general ideas about wanting a better life, but no specific plans for creating one. I wanted to be successful, but I hadn't defined what success meant or charted a course to reach it. I wanted to be wealthy, but I was following the financial habits of broke people. I wanted to be wise, but I was consuming the same mental junk food as everyone around me. Drift doesn't feel dangerous because nothing bad happens today, but nothing good happens either, and over time, nothing good happening becomes its own catastrophe. You drift past opportunities because you're not looking for them. You drift past your prime years because you're not using them intentionally. You drift past the life you could have had because you never decided to build it. The antidote to drift is decision. Specific, concrete, written down decision about what you want and where you're going. Not someday, today. Not in general terms, in specific detail. Because if you don't design your own life, someone else will design it for you. And they probably don't have your best interests in mind. The fourth silent killer is the bridge between knowing and doing, and most people never build it. Self-discipline, or more accurately, the lack of it. Self-discipline is doing what you need to do when you need to do it, whether you feel like it or not. It's that simple and that difficult. It's the ability to make yourself do the hard thing instead of the easy thing, the right thing instead of the comfortable thing, the thing that serves your future instead of the thing that serves your immediate appetite. I've met thousands of people who know exactly what they should do. They know they should eat better, exercise regularly, save money, invest in their education, build meaningful relationships, work on their dreams. They have all the knowledge they need. What they lack is the discipline to apply that knowledge consistently. There's a battle that goes on inside every human being every single day. It's the battle between what you want now and what you want most, between immediate gratification and long-term fulfillment, between comfort and growth. And whichever side wins that battle most often determines the quality of your life. When I was starting out, I wanted to be successful. I wanted it badly. But I also wanted to sleep in. I wanted to watch television instead of reading. I wanted to spend money on entertainment instead of investing in my education. I wanted to socialize with my friends instead of working on my goals. The problem wasn't that I didn't want success. The problem was that I wanted other things more in the moment. That's the key phrase. In the moment. In the moment, pizza tastes better than discipline. In the moment, sleeping in feels better than getting up to exercise. In the moment, spending money feels better than saving it. In the moment, watching television is easier than reading something challenging. But moments add up to days, days add up to years, and years add up to a life. And you don't get to live your life in isolated moments. You have to live with the accumulated results of all your moments. Self-discipline is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The less you use it, the weaker it becomes. And here's what most people don't realize. You can start building that muscle with the smallest thing. Making your bed every morning. Showing up on time. Keeping your word to yourself about small commitments. These tiny acts of self-discipline build the strength you need for bigger challenges. I started my discipline training with something embarrassingly simple. I decided I would read 10 pages of something worthwhile every single day. Not 100 pages. Not even 20. Just 10. Some days I wanted to read more, but I never allowed myself to read less. That one small discipline changed everything. It proved to me that I could make myself do something consistently. It showed me that I was stronger than my excuses. And once I won that small battle, I had the confidence to fight bigger ones. The person who cannot discipline themselves in small matters will never discipline themselves in large ones. The person who hits the snooze button on their alarm will hit the snooze button on their dreams. The person who breaks promises to themselves will break promises to others. Discipline isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become. Now, the fifth silent killer is perhaps the most controversial thing I'll say, but it's absolutely critical. Association. The people you spend time with will determine the person you become. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. Show me the books on your shelf, the conversations you engage in, the environment you've created around yourself, and I'll predict with startling accuracy where you'll be in 5 years. This isn't mysticism. It's mathematics. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you hang around 5 millionaires, you'll become the 6th. If you hang around 5 broke people, you'll become the 6th. If you spend time with positive, ambitious, growing people, you'll become positive, ambitious, and growing. If you spend time with negative, complacent, shrinking people, that's what you'll become. It's not magic, it's influence. And influence is powerful. This was the hardest lesson for me to learn because it required making painful choices. When I started my journey of personal development, I was surrounded by people who weren't interested in growth. They were good people. They weren't evil or malicious, but they were comfortable with mediocrity. They made fun of ambition. They discouraged dreams. They celebrated staying the same. I remember trying to share my excitement about a book I was reading with a group of friends. They laughed at me, called me a nerd, told me I was trying too hard. And in that moment, I had to make a choice. I could stay comfortable with people who would never challenge me to grow, or I could risk discomfort to find people who would elevate me. The choice wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I started spending less time with people who pulled me down and more time with people who pulled me up. I sought out mentors who had what I wanted. I joined groups focused on learning and growth. I read books by people who thought bigger than I did, and slowly my thinking changed. My standards changed. My results changed. Here's what you need to understand. Limited association isn't about being arrogant or thinking you're better than other people. It's about protecting your mind and your dream. Your mind is like a garden, and you have to be careful about what you allow to plant seeds there. Negative people plant negative seeds. Cynical people plant cynical seeds. Small-thinking people plant small-thinking seeds. And those seeds grow into thoughts, which grow into beliefs, which grow into actions, which grow into results. Some people will have to love you from a distance. That sounds harsh, but it's survival. You cannot allow people who are committed to misery to have unlimited access to your mind. You cannot allow dream killers to have speaking privileges in your life. You have to make tough choices about who gets your time and attention. But here's the flip side. When you surround yourself with the right people, everything becomes easier. When you're around people who believe in growth, growth becomes normal. When you're around people who take action, action becomes natural. When you're around people who expect excellence, excellence becomes your standard. The sixth silent killer creeps in so gradually that most people never see it coming. It starts as healthy skepticism and ends as toxic cynicism. It begins as asking good questions and ends as rejecting good answers. Negativity and cynicism are silent killers because they poison everything they touch. A cynic can find something wrong with everything. They can find reasons why your dream won't work, why that opportunity isn't real, why change isn't possible, why trying is pointless. They've been disappointed before, so they've decided to never hope again. They've failed before, so they've decided to never risk again. And they want you to join them in their protective prison of pessimism. Cynicism feels like wisdom. That's why it's so seductive. The cynic thinks they're being realistic, pragmatic, smart. They think they're protecting themselves from disappointment. But what they're actually doing is protecting themselves from possibility. They're building walls that keep out pain, but those same walls keep out opportunity, growth, and joy. I went through a cynical phase after some early failures. I tried some things that didn't work out. I trusted some people who let me down. I invested in some opportunities that turned out to be dead ends. And I started developing a negative filter. I started looking for what was wrong instead of what was right. I started expecting failure instead of success. I started protecting myself from disappointment by refusing to hope. My mentor saw what was happening and confronted me directly. He said, "Jim, cynicism is a luxury you cannot afford. Cynicism is for people who have given up on their dreams. You haven't built yours yet, so you don't get to be cynical." That hit me hard. He was right. I was letting past disappointments steal my future possibilities. I was allowing negative experiences to create a negative worldview. I was becoming the kind of person who found problems instead of solutions, who saw obstacles instead of opportunities, who criticized instead of created. Breaking free from negativity requires conscious effort. You have to guard your mind like you guard your home. You wouldn't leave your front door open and let just anything walk in. Why would you leave your mind open and let just any thought take root? You have to be selective about what you watch, what you read, what you listen to, who you talk to. You have to actively feed your mind positive, constructive, empowering input. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending problems don't exist. It means choosing to focus on solutions instead of dwelling on problems. It means looking for what's possible instead of fixating on what's wrong. It means maintaining belief in better days while working to create them. The seventh and final silent killer is the one that ties all the others together. Short-term thinking. Trading tomorrow for today. Sacrificing the future on the altar of immediate comfort. Short-term thinking is when you know something will cost you later, but you do it anyway because the price isn't due today. It's eating food that tastes good now but damages your health over time. It's spending money on things that feel good today but leave you broke tomorrow. It's choosing entertainment over education because the consequences of ignorance won't show up until years later. The problem with short-term thinking is that it feels completely rational in the moment. Your future self seems like a different person. Someone far away who will somehow handle whatever mess you create today. But your future self is you. And that distant tomorrow always becomes today eventually. I spent my 20s living entirely for the moment. I spent everything I earned because saving seemed pointless when I wanted things now. I neglected my health because being young felt like being invincible. I avoided difficult conversations because dealing with them later seemed easier than dealing with them now. I was constantly choosing the easier path, the comfortable option, the instant reward. And every single one of those choices was a withdrawal from my future. By the time I was 25, my future had arrived and the bill came due. I was broke, unhealthy, unprepared, and stuck. The choices I'd made years earlier were now my reality. The easy roads I'd taken had led to hard places. The instant gratification I'd chosen had created long-term misery. That's when I learned one of life's most important principles. We must all suffer from one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. The pain of discipline is temporary and creates strength. The pain of regret is permanent and creates sorrow. So how do we defeat these 7 silent killers? How do we protect ourselves from neglect, rationalization, drift, lack of discipline, poor association, negativity, and short-term thinking? The answer starts with awareness. You cannot fight an enemy you don't recognize. Now you know their names. Now you can see them operating in your life. That awareness changes everything. Every time you're tempted to neglect something important, you can catch yourself. Every time you start rationalizing, you can stop and tell yourself the truth. Every time you feel yourself drifting, you can grab the wheel and steer. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need action. Small, consistent, daily action. Start with one area where these silent killers have gained ground in your life. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's your personal development. Pick one and make one small change today. If neglect has been your enemy, commit to one small daily discipline. Read 10 pages. Walk for 15 minutes. Save $5. Make one important phone call. The size of the action matters less than the consistency of it. Small daily disciplines compound into major achievements over time. If rationalization has been your trap, commit to brutal honesty with yourself. Stop explaining why you can't and start figuring out how you can. Stop defending your limitations and start attacking them. When you catch yourself making an excuse, stop mid-sentence and tell yourself the truth instead. If you've been drifting, sit down today and write out specific goals, not wishes, goals. With deadlines, with action steps, with measurements. Design your life on paper before you try to build it in reality. Decide where you're going so you can start moving in that direction. If discipline has been your weakness, start small and build. Make your bed every morning. Show up on time. Keep one promise to yourself every single day. Build a muscle. Prove to yourself that you're stronger than your excuses. If poor association has been holding you back, make the tough choices. Spend less time with people who drain you and more time with people who inspire you. Find mentors. Join groups. Read books by people who think bigger. You become like the people you spend time with, so choose carefully. If negativity has infected your thinking, go on a mental diet. Be as careful about what enters your mind as you are about what enters your body. Turn off the news that feeds you fear. Stop engaging in gossip and complaint sessions. Fill your mind with positive, constructive, empowering content. If short-term thinking has been stealing your future, start making decisions based on where you want to be in 5 years, not where you are today. Ask yourself before every choice, is this an investment or an expense? Does this serve my future or just my present? Will my future self thank me for this decision or regret it? The life you're living today is the result of choices you made years ago. The life you'll be living 5 years from now is being created by the choices you make today, right now, this moment. You're either building the future you want or demolishing it. There's no neutral ground. Two people start the same opportunities, same resources, same potential. 5 years later, they're living completely different lives. The difference isn't luck. It's not circumstances. It's choices. Daily choices. Small choices. Choices about what to neglect and what to attend to. Choices about truth and rationalization. Choices about direction and drift. Choices about discipline and comfort. Choices about association. Choices about attitude. Choices about time perspective. Those 7 silent killers are working right now. The only question is whether you'll recognize them and fight back, or whether you'll let them continue their quiet destruction. The battle for your future is being fought today, in small moments, in simple choices. Win those battles, and you win the war. Lose them, and years from now you'll wonder what happened to your dreams. The decision is yours. It always has been.